Yeah. You can only go one bar.
All right, guys. So tonight we're going to kick off some study of triangles, specifically the front triangle. Yeah, I figured you'd be excited about this. So I think if I had to go in order, you can get your take on this. Yeah, everybody's take, but I think if we had to kind of like rate submissions, like effectiveness, based on like your positioning plus the effectiveness of the actual submission, I think rear naked choke is, I think, king. Like, I don't know if there's anything better than that. And then for me, like either some form of head and arm choke or triangle is going to be next. And I would probably put triangle next. What do you think? You put before triangle, or
I would do guillotine up there with rear naked.
Okay.
But yeah, head and arm and triangle. Like then, yeah, all the head and arm chokes like triangles or the head and arm itself.
The only reason I put, for me, I put triangle above head and arm choke is because it's your legs against their head instead of just your upper body. So presumably always stronger. So we spent a good amount of time on the back, and so I think that the next, and we can always be going back to that, but I think the next most effective like bang for your buck, especially if you're like new, is studying triangle. So
What about power line? All fat folk like me like power line.
yeah, I think Kimura is like, honestly, like Kimura is like right after triangle for me,
I like
because of the control mixed with like
That's my
and the
bread and
transitional
butter.
control you have. Yeah. It even sets up the triangles. So
Yeah, it's true.
so I think, so first off, it's not super commonly known, but there are 5 different types of triangles, and we're only going to focus in on one today, and probably one for the next week. Like, we're not going to go over all 5 right now. Most triangles you've ever seen, whether you've seen them in UFC or you walk into any of the gyms, is going to be this type of triangle right here, where I'm in front of him, and this is called a front triangle. Okay. But there are several others. There is rear, there is side, there's reverse, there's opposite, and then we also have the Japanese names actually written up there still on the chalk wall. Front is Omote Senkaku, all right? And if you can't remember that, you just remember front triangle, and it's when I'm in front of him. These are between Omote, front, Ushiro, rear, and Hantai, which is opposite. You can actually transition from all 3 of these. So if I have a front, but he hides his arm, I can transition to a Hantai, which is a opposite side. Or if I were to just rotate my hips around Hudson, everything else remaining equal, or move my hips around him. Good. No, let me take it back real quick. Just sit there. Yeah, just
sorry.
So right here, if nothing else has changed other than rotating my hips, this is Shiro Senkaku, rear triangle. Those 3 can interrelate. You can chain those together. And then the other 2, Gyaku and Yoko, you can also chain those together. That's as much as I'm going to say about the 5 triangles right now. Just wanted you to be aware that you can hit triangles from a lot of places, not just like when they're in front of you. So real quick, our first drill is just going to be starting here from what we call a trap triangle. So this is when, first off, the requirements for any triangle is 1 arm in, 1 arm out, okay? So like anytime his arm's still in, there's no triangle. Even if his hand is still kind of fighting inside, I don't really have a triangle threat yet, right? But once I've got 1 arm in, but 1 arm out, I have just his head and his arm trapped between my legs. Well, right now a shoulder as well. This is where I can start setting up the triangle. Now, here you'll see my feet are crossed, but I'm not really able to apply any kind of strangulation pressure right now, okay? This is just kind of like, think of a front triangle. Think of this as being set up in 2 phases. So this is phase 1. It's where we're going to call this is the trap triangle. This is where I have the head and the arm trapped between my legs, and I have my feet crossed, okay? Next phase is when I actually start to cut the angles and be to where I can actually apply strangulation pressure. So what I want you to do first, before we get too in the weeds and nerdy, is just start at this trap triangle. All I want you to do is focus on breaking his posture by never reach. Always bring your knees to your chest to break his posture, and then I can collar tie him. And then as I control his posture, all I want you to do for this first lesson, just to get some of you, it'll be your very first triangle, right? So I want you to control this posture, stay strong with this by back heeling with this leg. I want you to take this top leg to the hip, find his hip. I'm going to use it to cut an angle. So I'm going to push off of his hip and watch my knee and my leg rotate as I cut this angle. Okay. Reference point for you here is making sure that the bottom half of your leg here is above both of his shoulders. So if I have shoulder here, shoulder over here, my leg is closer to his head than his shoulders are. Okay. From here, I continue controlling his posture. I just want you to lock up the figure of four. I'm gonna put my shoelaces in his knee pit. And then to get the tap here, this is a very basic triangle. We're gonna do a much better one, but this is your first one. We're gonna continue controlling posture. We're going to start to hip into the squeeze. And that'll be our tap, all right? So one more, just starting from the trap triangle. I need to bring him to me. It's his first, the two main defenses that the two main reactions they're always gonna give you is either posturing or stacking you. And posturing is always probably gonna be their preferred reaction if they can get there first. So as if I need to break his posture down, but I have a trap triangle, I can always bring my knees to my chest, and then I can take my collar tie to reinforce this. Once I've got the arm isolated and the collar tie, I'm continuing to bring my knees to my chest, and I'm back heeling, and now I can start to cut this angle by taking my heel to his hip, cutting my angle. Some coaches like to say, look in their ear. We can say that for now. We're gonna make this a little more complex in a second, but right now, yeah, look in their ear, and then continue controlling their posture. Bring this around, lock your shoelaces in your knee pit, and then we're gonna continue holding their head, controlling their posture, and we're gonna hip into them. Okay. When I say hip in, like literally, like kind of glute bridge, using that lock that you have as like your reference point, glute bridge. Okay. Questions on that? All right. Let's do. Yeah.
Do you recommend that over
No.
reaching for a thigh?
Not at all. I'm giving everybody the very basic first day triangle, and then we're gonna build on that. Yeah. Any other questions? You already know like the good one. Yeah. That doesn't mean this doesn't work. Okay. It's just good, better, best. Like we've seen this working in UFC, like just a standard old Gracie Jiu Jitsu front triangle. So like, let's not say it doesn't work, but there is better. All right, we'll explore that tonight. Any other questions? All right. Oh, I saw the posture. All right, 1, 2, 3. Everybody, let's make some space. Let's just circle up right here. All right, we're gonna do a little kipping drill real quick. Some of y'all just get used to warming up your hip, getting them shooting toward the ceiling. All right, so just circle up, make a little space. All right. It might feel silly, but this is actually fundamental for not just shooting triangles, but arm bars, leg entanglements, like with Rimiyashi that we went over last month. Like anytime we can elevate our hips, or elevating our hips is really important. All right, so and also with mount escapes, like kipping, like this is a very applicable movement in a lot of places. So first thing we're going to do, we'll cheat a little bit. Start seated. All I want to do is start to ball up as I fall back. I'm going to bring my knees to my chest. All right, so this is one. I'm just going to fall back, bring my knees to my chest. All right, I become a ball. You see how when we're kids and we're in a swing set, right? Or I'll still hop in a swing set when I take my kids to the park, like whatever. But you naturally like tend to kind of kick your legs forward and retract them in to build momentum and maintain momentum. You know, like once you get to that like peak, it's really easy to just kind of maintain momentum with just a little leg movement, timing it right? Everybody's felt this, right? Anyone not used a swing set before? Absolutely questions. All right, so the idea is the same. If I want to be able to transfer momentum, right? The idea of a kip, I want to be able to use my legs to transfer momentum and throw my body. Okay, they do this in gymnastics. We do this in jiu-jitsu. They do it in CrossFit. Right. So what I'm going to do is as I initiate momentum by bringing my knees to my chest and I'm falling backwards, at a certain point right there, right? My hips start to come off the ground. I want to now transition or transfer that momentum towards the ceiling. So what I want you to do is going to look like this. We're going to become a ball and we're going to shoot our feet towards the sky. And we're just going to keep going up and down for a second. All right. So look, my knees go to my chest. I shoot up and look how they come back to my chest when I come down so that I can redirect the momentum back forward. Okay. Right. So do a few of these. You can even make sure you're breathing, not holding your breath. Okay. You should be able to like talk through this. It's not like it shouldn't be super physically demanding. Okay. But also it is a new movement for several of you, so don't, it might take a second to feel it. Once you've got a few of those, we're gonna make it a little harder by now that I'm flat, right? I'm barely off the mat right now. There's a lot of friction between me and the mat. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I can still generate momentum by bringing my knees to my chest. And I'm always like, when I say become a ball in jiu-jitsu, the goal is to reduce friction with the mat, because as my shoulders and my hips are all on the mat, like it's a lot harder for me to move around. But if I ball up, any of y'all right now should be able to come and fairly easily start to spin me around, right? If we're playing guard and I'm a ball, I can easily frame on him and start to spin around, right? So reducing friction, becoming a ball, really important in jiu-jitsu. And in this case, as I bring my knees to my chest, I'm going to have concave shoulders. See, my chin comes up towards my chest. I become that ball. And as soon as my hips reach this fulcrum right here, I can send my hips to the ceiling. I can redirect that. So it's going to go like this. And it's the same movement, but I don't even have to sit all the way up. And this is where you start to learn how to control that momentum, right? Where I can either choose to come all the way up, or I can choose to just wait right here, right? I can just like I'm in a swing set, all right? Think of it like a swing set. If you want to slow down the swing set, it's hard for me to put it into words. Like you'll know to use your legs a little differently. I don't know how to, like, maybe someone else has a better explanation, but like you intuitively probably know how to slow yourself down in the swing set, right? By using your legs. The same concept of like, if I want to go faster or if I want to go slower, I rely on like my timing of my legs to change my center of gravity and direct it somewhere. Okay. So everybody get a couple more reps of that, and then we're gonna use. I swear this is applicable. All right. I know this looks a little silly, but I swear this is going to be pivotal for leg entanglements, triangles, even mount escapes. All right. And you can practice this at home. Like you don't need an axe for this on your bedroom floor. Right? Yeah, you want to get even more applicable? Do what Tucker's doing, right? You can once you're comfortable with the standard, you can start coming up, adding a little twist, and actually locking up triangles. Okay. That initial kipping motion, that's huge for jiu-jitsu. All right, let's get into this next phase. All right, so let's talk front triangle now. From the mechanics of finishing, like, right, we already had basic one, right, where we're just gonna kind of come off, like in his ear, all this good stuff, right? It's good, it works, but there's better. Okay, so first off, just to talk about some concepts to give you like rules of thumb, no matter kind of what kind of triangle you're going for and what the position is. Some rules of thumb. My goal is to take as much of his shoulder out of the choke as possible. Okay, so what I mean by that is if I'm here and let's say I lock my triangle behind the shoulder, y'all see how much of his shoulder? Did everybody see? Y'all see how much of his shoulder is? Y'all can actually visibly see it, right? So first off, it's gonna be harder to choke him. Secondly, he can even emphasize this. He can shoot his arm through more, bring more of his shoulder in, and break my lock. Okay, and then start to knee cut, all that good stuff. All right, so blocking my lock behind the shoulder is typically not going to be a good idea because I can still see the shoulder. When I say let's take his shoulder out of the equation, I start at my trap triangle. First thing I want to do, obviously, break his posture. And now I need to be able to make a transition to be able to, like, as I cut an ankle, I'm going to be able to make his shoulder disappear here. Okay. It's like a magic trick. Like, as I cut this angle off to the side, watch my knee rotate into his ear. And now you can't see his shoulder anymore, right? You guys can't see his shoulder. Right now, if I lock this up, first off, it's much tighter. Okay. And the finish for this is I'm making my feet both point the same direction. I've got a wedge here that's right here in the back of his head, right above his ear. What's going on, man? Oh, sorry. Oh, thank you. Got this little wedge in the back of his head and back of his ear. That's also like reinforced to where I'm controlling some of his posture. I'm also able to reinforce that with my hand. On top of this, I'm able to lock the lock far above his shoulder here. Right. So now if you look at my shin, back to what I said earlier, a good finish on the front triangle is going to be my shin is above his shoulders. Right. So let's Chad, you come here. You do some dabs. All right, so right here. This is the line, right? So I got this. Oh. This is the line that lines up Chad's shoulders with one another, right? If Hudson is behind here, right? If his foot, any part of his leg, his bottom half of his leg crosses this rod, he's going to have a lot of shoulder in his lock when he locks it up. But once he windshield wipes, he cuts his angle. Now when he locks it, the bottom half of his leg is above the line of the shoulders. When he locks it, it's going to be incredibly tight, and there's no shoulder in the choke. He just has a head and an arm. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So look, rule of thumb: don't lock your lock right behind the shoulder. Okay. I always want first off, I want to beat him on the shoulder line here with the right angle, and then ideally, I want my lock always above the shoulder. But even better if I can get it above the head. Okay. So because one of his common reactions, if I got his posture controlled, is to start trying to stack. But if I track him by keeping my knee on the back of his head, right here, you see how my feet are pointed the same direction, and I still got this wedge here that's controlling his posture. As he stacks me, I can actually continue rotating with him, and I can take even more of that shoulder out. Right. And it really just gets worse the more they stack you. They actually cinch the triangle almost like a tourniquet. They cinch it up even deeper. So the drill, sorry, it's long-winded. As I tend to be, I know guys, I'm sorry. All right, trap triangle. First thing he's gonna look to do, early stage triangle defense is like his posture. So for me to break this posture, look how I've got my feet crossed here. I've got shoelace to shoelace. I can flare my knees and bring them towards my chest to bring his head to me. I don't want to be reaching up here. Okay, I want to bring him to me. Once I've secured this is where if I've actually got this, it's much more likely that they start trying to transition to a stack, right? But regardless, even if maybe they just freeze up, who knows? But regardless, my next phase before I even worry about the leg is to start cutting this angle. Sometimes this all happens at once. If they start stacking me quickly, go ahead. I've got to start rotating. See how my knee cuts down? The more he stacks me, the more my knee has to cut down towards his groin. And the more my hips need to get up back to that kipping motion of getting my hips up. I need to be able to throw my hip up, right? I need to be able to spin under and throw my hips up. I can also throw my hips behind him. You see how my feet are pointed kind of behind me in that direction, but the lock is going to be behind his head now. And this also means the more he even tries to posture up now, that he kind of chokes himself. Right? So one more time, this is what I want y'all to do. Trap triangle, I want you to bring him to you by flaring your knees and bringing them to your chest. Have this. Next, I want you to start cutting an angle. So I want you to get this knee in front of the shoulder, make his shoulder disappear. The front of my knee is tracking his head. And I've also got his posture here. However he chooses, if he doesn't react at all, I can lock it there and finish him. If he starts reacting by stacking, I can continue spinning underneath him by cutting my knee down towards the groin and getting my hips up and locking the lock behind his head. Okay? So you can give him both reactions in this drill. Just start with the basic one where you don't even really stack him. But I want you as the attacker to focus on getting that shoulder out of the choke and focus on making sure your finish, that this part of your leg is above the shoulders. Those are the two big key details. That makes sense? Is there any question? All right, I'll be walking around. So, and Hudson. All right, 1, 2, 3.
All right, so like,
So I'm gonna give you one key detail. And then I'm gonna give you a couple of, well, I'll give you a couple of little goodies, especially for my advanced guys. So one big thing here is for me to lock that lock, like it being kind of north of his shoulder, that's great. Like that's at least like bare minimum, right? I don't want to lock it behind his shoulder where you can see it. I want to cut my angle, get my knee in front of the front delt, and that if I lock it there, it's obviously going to be much tighter. But it's better, like I said earlier, if I lock it behind the head. And for me to do this, I need to get my, so this is my choke leg, right? This is going to be my support leg. This is my choke leg because it's touching his leg. It's touching his neck, okay? I need to get the knee of my choke leg below his ear. Okay, so if it's right there, so let's rotate so I can see my knee.
Yeah.
Good. So right now my knee is above his ear. Right here, it's below his ear, right? In like right here in relation to the ground. Now, when if I'm controlling his posture still, this is why I wanted to warm up with that kipping drill. It's because I'm literally using a kipping motion to elevate my hips, shoot my hips towards the ceiling, and lock my lock behind the head, like so. Okay, here, here. And see how I might even be here, right? I might not even have the leg yet, but I start to cut this angle by moving out to the side and penduluming my leg as I collect his leg. And now I'm able to lock my lock behind his head, okay? And that all comes from getting my knee lower than his ear. Like, so that's one extra key detail you can focus on is our big details: shin above the shoulders, lock above, at least above the shoulder. We want to take his shoulder out of the choke. And then lastly, cutting my knee under the ear. Now, for my more advanced guys, if he goes to stack more, sometimes I might need to continue letting my knee almost like something you got to feel. My knee has to come down towards the mat for me to continue like getting my hips elevated off the ground. Right. So like if he's really stacking me, I might have to get my knee like, see how almost at his groin, and it's all that's left is like my ankle behind his head, but I can still lock it right there. Okay. So this is something you can play with in open mat if you want to, is letting them like really stack you and allow your knee to, like, even right now, if it's just kind of barely below the ear, allow it to chop down towards the groin as you shoot your far hip up to find, right? And all the while, I'm controlling posture, and as soon as I get my hips up, my knee is finding the back of his head, even if I don't have my lock yet. I want to be able to get my hips up, track the back of his head with this knee, and point my feet the same direction, okay? One more detail for my advanced guys, and then y'all just keep getting the same reps in. We're not going to do any more tonight. I want y'all to keep repping this. This is the most effective triangle you can get. Like, this particular variation of the front triangle is probably the best there is, but at least that we know of today, right? The next thing I'll show some of you guys, I was talking to a couple of you about this, is let's say he goes to stack, right? And I kind of lock this up so tight, he gets so off balance that he rolls over, right? I take him over to his side, right? This is right into 3/4 Jujikatame. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. It's a variation of armbar. It's the strongest variation of armbar is when I'm here, but both my legs are crossed over the head. So normal armbar, we'll go over armbars eventually, like a more in depth here. This would be like a standard armbar, standard Jujikatame. My leg is over his torso. My other leg is over his neck. In a 3/4, they're both over his neck and they're crossed. The benefit of this is if I take him over and I can't finish that triangle, almost every time you have a failed triangle, you have an armbar to fall back as a secondary attack. Okay, almost every time, 'cause you still got an arm and your hips are still under the shoulder. Okay, so right here, we landed like this, right? Maybe I lose my angle, I can't finish this, but I can start armbar. Next, if he starts stacking me here, this is the beauty of 3/4. My knee comes back out, tracks the back of his head, and finds a triangle on the way up. Right, so we can cause a pretty good dilemma here. But yes, remember, that's where like this is the advanced guys who want a little more, just play with that. Remember, failed triangle, almost always there's going to be an armbar attempt. Failed armbar, there's almost always a leg entanglement. So you can just keep attacking. Okay. Any questions on what we've done so far? I'm not gonna do any more tonight. Like that's it. I want y'all to drill for another 5-6 minutes, and then we're gonna do a positional, and then we'll have open mat. Okay. Cool. All right. 1, 2, 3.